Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special broadcast. I have Jim and Corinne Thorp on with us today. I'm going to let them briefly introduce themselves.
Good. Yeah. Jim and my wife, she was actually born in Brazil, and we joined World Venture 35 years ago, 38 years ago. Worked in Brazil for many, many years, a few years in Mozambique, and then we became the director for the Americas. So we retired last year.
Yeah.
So almost a year of retirement.
Awesome. So just as an FY to everyone out there, this is not a one-way conversation. We want to hear from you. If you have questions, comments on what you're hearing today, please put them in the chat. We will be monitoring them. And you can learn more about Jim and Corinne on their giving link in the chat that I've put there. So let's talk about ministry life before retirement and becoming involved in Emeritus. I can't do it today.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. So tell us about your ministry life before retirement.
You want to share that?
Well, as Jim said, we spent 18 years in North Brazil doing church planting and a lot of mentoring. He taught in the seminary and directed that. Then we moved to Mozambique, and there we worked in all kinds of things, orphanages, some compassion ministries, mentored there, also pastors' wives, as well as young kids. And he taught in the Bible training school there. And then we became directors for the Americas. So then we traveled about almost 200 days a year, visiting our workers in North, Central, and South America.
Yeah, and I think just in that time, talking to people, preparing them for retirement, especially our missionaries in the Americas, we were connected with a group of mission organizations, and we created a little association to help honor our missionary seniors. And so through that, we got connected with the Emeritus program that was actually begun by Kala Jean Wright years ago, and she and Joe put together the Emeritus program. And so we got an idea that maybe that would be a way that we could be used continuing doing work in ministry in retirement, would be helping prepare World Venture missionaries for retirement. That's something we just went through.
What I think is really nice about World Venture is, as I've gotten to know all the global workers, including you two, is that you all have a funny definition of retirement. It is not the same definition as most of us who just go to church every Sunday. When we think of retirement, you never stop being involved in the local church and local ministry. You continue. In fact, we have one global worker that is suddenly got back into Bible translation from her U.S. Base. So yeah, I mean, it's great. It's so inspiring to me to see that you two have not been inactive. So with your new ministry, what does that look like nowadays in contrast to former ministry in your retirement? What does it look like to be involved in Emeritus?
Yeah, we kind of had some goals of what we wanted to do in retirement. One was give back to our home church. So we're doing that through, I teach a Sunday school class. We are working with the missions committee and beginning to see ways we might encourage them. We wanted to be involved in our community, and we wanted to be involved still with World Venture in some way. So the Emeritus program was the one way that we could be connected with World Venture. And it's a 3-day seminar for all the missionaries that are getting close to retirement, even some 10, 15 years away, to come when they're in the U.S., to find a time to come together when they're in that group and just share some ideas with them about how to prepare for retirement, what the transition might look like, what things they need to do even financially as they get ready for retirement, family issues and caring for older parents or younger kids, and just different things that they're going to face in retirement.
We also talk about how to leave the field well,
Right.
finishing well, making sure you say your goodbyes, not leaving conflict or issues that other people have to clean up after you leave. So it's kind of the whole gamut, before you leave, when you come back, transitioning back, and then as you prepare to stay.
I think one of the really good things is we realize we're not experts in this in any way. And so one of the days is set aside for consultation. So we have a person come from Social Security and sits down with each person or couple and goes over, okay, what do you need? What is it going to look like? And what do you need to do ahead of time? We have somebody from Envoy, which is our World Venture financial retirement fund.
Mhm.
And so somebody comes to talk to them about their retirement fund, somebody from Medicare to talk about Medicare and housing, just different things like that. So.
Awesome. That's what I also love about World Venture, just passing the baton, literally in your case last spring, passing the baton, basically, getting the field prepared, not leaving it vacant so that ministry work can continue, that's momentum. I love that. So what are you doing right now specifically with your community that we talked about? It was just, I thought that was really special.
So a couple years ago, we started supporting a pregnancy center called Hope Pregnancy Clinic here in town. Is it only here in Salem?
There.
But lots of places have similar places where young girls can go, or married women, and they have an ultrasound. They see the life of the child, and hopefully they will decide to keep the baby. So they have two buildings, and we work in the mentoring building where we talk to the parents, those who have decided to become parents, and we go through videos with them, and we talk about what it means to be parents of a small baby, and they get incentives. It's just a great way. We also do Bible studies with them. So it's not only preparing them for becoming parents, but it's hoping to prepare their soul for eternity.
And the thing that I wasn't sure about is what can a guy do volunteering and trying to help at a pregnancy clinic?
Because it's mostly women.
Because it's all women.
Yeah, it's only Jim's really the only male volunteer.
But when we talked to our friend who works there, she got really excited because she runs the mentoring side of things where they offer this 6-week mentoring. And there are times when the husband or the boyfriend comes with the woman. Mm-hmm. And the idea of having not just a woman doing this mentoring, but a couple. So it gives me an opportunity to encourage the men to recognize what their role is as fathers, husbands awesome. First, and then fathers. And so that's been a unique way to get involved in these couples' lives.
Actually, it's interesting because we've started mostly with, pregnant women, but Maria, who is our coordinator, she said, I have this couple that already have 4 children from 4 to 14. And they saw this program and they wanted to know if they could get help to become better parents. And so we spent the last 6 weeks with them going through videos, especially for the man, of what is a father. And we had some great conversations and motivating them to learn how to become better parents. So it's been a very interesting journey at this clinic.
Awesome. And you basically said that you had an opportunity to use your language skills.
Yeah, it was interesting. The first woman that came in, she was actually Brazilian. And so we were able to talk to her in Portuguese. She ended up not coming back. But then the next couple, the one that we actually just finished, the first couple that we finished with were Brazilians as well. So we were able to meet with them each time in Portuguese. And they were pretty excited when they came in and we greeted them in Portuguese.
Because they haven't been in the U.S. all that long, so.
Yeah, the other couple we did in Spanish, and that was a little harder.
Yeah.
We can sort of get by in Spanish, but...
This was Mexican Spanish, and we do better in South American Spanish, but at least we could let him speak in his language, and we tried. We'll just leave it at that. We tried.
Yeah.
Just just out of curiosity, what is the difference between South America Spanish and Mexican Spanish?
Every place has their own accent, and
Their
even
own
the words, their
slang and
slang words. Yeah, that's very different. And Mexicans tend to speak very quickly,
Mhm.
and it's almost like they slur some of their words together. At least that's what it sounded like to us. So it's a little hard to, because we don't have the real basic foundation in Spanish we wish we had.
Awesome.
a
So,
goal to pursue.
Yes.
so what is it difficult? How difficult is it for a retiring missionary? We're going back to Emeritus. Is it difficult? How difficult is it for a retiring missionary to transition to new ministries? Tell me why that is, and give some examples of how that transition has been difficult, but how you help them. Because it can't be easy. I mean, you think of the ones that have been on the field for 40, 50 years, and that's home.
Yep.
So tell me something about that.
Yeah, the part of the struggle that a lot of missionaries have is they have, for sometimes, many years, their identity has been just all wrapped up in going to another culture, learning the language, living in that culture, and then having a successful ministry doing the things they do overseas. But sometimes those gifts and abilities and talents that you have overseas don't translate into what the U.S. Even churches are looking for,
Or interested in.
Yeah, or even are interested in. So a lot of it has to do with the attitude of the people coming back. I would say probably the best use of the talents is working with the immigrants that are in the U.S. Because of the exposure you have to living in another culture, even if it's not the culture you lived in overseas, just that experience of learning another culture, I think the missionaries coming back are better able to get involved in different ways of interacting with the immigrants in the community. So you do see that. Yeah.
Well, and I think, this country is not the same place that our workers who spent their entire career overseas left from.
Mm-hmm.
Changed a lot. And so it's hard to know where to fit in when you first come back. But, over time, like Jim said, the immigrants have come to us. The world has come to us here in America.
Yes.
And, you always have the opportunity to help your church even get started in an international ministry right in your backyard. So.
Oh yeah, you can look at any kind of, if you take a drive through any city, you can see the different cultures around. For instance, I once got lost in Phoenix and found there's a West African section of Phoenix where there's their own grocery store, an Ethiopian coffee shop. I mean, it's out there. There's a lot of different places you can find to hang out and use those skills again.
Yeah, I think I would just say one of the challenges to that is missionaries who come back to the U.S., they have sometimes almost a whole life of experience that they have lived. And then you come back here and find out that people really aren't interested in that experience overseas. You kind of feel a little bit rejected, not rejected as such, but it's like there's nobody really interested in what I've been doing. And sometimes that's kind of the truth. So being able to adapt and just say, okay, I had that experience overseas. I do have things to offer, but I have to kind of adapt that to where I am now and find out how I fit into this new reality. It's kind of this reverse culture. It's a reverse culture shock, as for sure, but it's also this reverse cultural adaptation that missionaries need to practice when they come back.
Well, and I think another thing, like, for example, when we came back, Jim sat down and wrote to our missions committee, or to the head of the missions committee, these are some areas that we feel like we could be a help to the church in the area of missions. And so that kind of stimulated them approaching us and saying, how can we work together? They honestly, they don't think necessarily of all those things that we've done overseas because they haven't walked that journey completely with us. So a lot depends on us also maybe initiating the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, the workers are few is not just a saying, a scripture that we use for overseas and praying for more workers, but it's also uh, we you've got a small percentage of people volunteering at churches, and so having valuable experience that where you can translate that into a missions team or a church into something they feel they can use, that's great stuff. Um, what are some examples of some missionaries that have come out of retirement that you've seen that have done maybe transitioned into new ministry well?
Um,
Well, some have gone back to the field and continued their ministry, or maybe they spend part of the year there and part of the year here.
yeah, I would say what she's saying is really the most effective ministry people have been able to continue would be that not full time, but being able to go back to their place of service and continue to use their language ability in different ways of training. So they're not living overseas; they're living in the U.S., but they're able to go back occasionally and do things. We're involved with Restoration Ministries. We're part of the board, and so we get to go to Brazil in August for a few weeks, and it'll be an opportunity for us to work with the board and this ministry and see what they're doing, as well as connect with the churches and the seminary where we worked up north. So that's one of the effective ways people get involved. The other one is actually being able to come back and help their church think through how to make their missions program at the church better. What the missionaries have to offer, it's not the church perspective as much as it is. We've seen the perspective of missionaries, for instance, short-term teams.
Yeah.
You see the side of the missionaries receiving those short-term teams. We're not so much involved in how they're sent out, but we can help the church know how to prepare the team so that they can arrive and be a better help and not a hindrance to ministry overseas.
Well, I think one other way would be in the community, in pregnancy centers or other things like that. So many of the people that come are from a different culture because they have less resources. And if you speak their language, it makes a huge difference because you're communicating, from your heart to them rather than in a strange language that they're struggling to understand.
Awesome. And just as a reminder for those watching, you can feel free to make comments or put your questions in if you have questions for them, especially if you're a missionary with our org that has any questions. You can feel free to put that in the chat. So when a missionary retires, can people still support their work in retirement? Explain how that works.
Yeah, World Venture has done this way. I mean, other missionaries or other mission organizations do it similarly, maybe a little different, but World Venture allows a missionary to move to a new status called Global Specialist. And the Global Specialist status just means that they're able to keep a fund at the organization. People can contribute to that fund, and they can use that for ministry purposes. It's not for salary or personal items. It's just that allows a person to continue to do ministry in their retirement, and then they're able to charge the expenses for that to this ministry fund. So it's called Global Specialists, and that's where most of the workers who want to continue doing ministry with World Venture. For instance, we're going to Brazil, so we have the funding there in our account that we're able to cover those expenses to do ministry in Brazil, and going to Emeritus for us, things like that.
Awesome. So how can people support your work, your trip to Brazil and any other ministry trips, as well as Emeritus's work? How can people support that, and how can people pray for both you and the project itself?
Yeah, good question. Thanks for asking that. We do have an emeritus special project. I think
It's
I
in the
think
chat.
I'll put the link in there. And that is a fund that we're able to use when we do these emeritus seminars every year. And what it allows us to do is reduce the cost to our missionaries. So they don't have to cover as much. There's not a lot of cost really.
Cost is more in the
But
housing.
it's still, there are expenses, the food and the people that come in and the different people who are presenting different things. So there are some costs. And so the funding for that allows us to offer a lower price to the missionaries. So that's just one way that allows that people can contribute to that, which would help all the missionaries to not have to pay as much out of their own funds. And for us, the ministry funds are going to be used for a continual ministry items that we are going to be involved with, like continuing to be involved with Emeritus, and then the ministry of Restoration Ministries in Brazil. And working with, I mentioned an association of mission organizations that we're connected with. It's drawing mission organizations together to talk about how we honor missionary seniors or retirees, alumni from our different organizations. We have about 25 different organizations we meet together, and I'm helping lead the planning team for how we interact with those organizations and how we discuss things that would be helpful to organizations in this area. So that's another area that funding for getting to meetings and being able to promote that.
Nikki, you also asked how they could support us through prayer, and that's really an important thing. We need a lot of wisdom. You know, we've done one year of emeritus, but obviously we want to make this as effective for our workers as possible. We don't want to waste their time or their money. So we just need wisdom. We have a team that works with us, and we just need wisdom to know what are the more important issues that we need to discuss and help them work through so that it is really something that is beneficial to them. And then I would say the same for Brazil, you know, just for Jim, especially wisdom as he helps the board understand both the cultural and the financial parts of restoration ministries and things like that.
And then just praying for an open door to have an impact in even couples.
At Hope,
At Hope Pregnancy, as we mentor them.
Because most are not believers.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So going back to the pregnancy center, if someone wanted to get involved in a community center like that to mentor others, what do you suggest in how they mentor a couple? What do you suggest that they do?
You know, part of the mentoring, it's not necessarily the best word, perhaps. It is preparing the couple for the birth. So there's a lot of, okay, what is the pregnancy going to be like for the woman? What is the birthing experience going to be like? So it's helping them learn and prepare for that, and then even how do you parent the first couple years. But for me, one of the things that is a key that I just kind of realized is the importance of letting them know, first of all, that we are a faith-based organization, whether they have a faith or not, that we believe there is a God who made this miracle of birth so beautiful. But then I'm talking, if the man is there, to help him see that he also has a very, very significant role in loving the wife as an example to his child, but also then being the father that the child needs, and how much of an impact the father can have on the child's well-being. So helping them just see the importance of it. So it's just, letting them know that they are a valuable part of a team, that they need to work together as they prepare for this.
We also pray for them at the end of each session, and we have to ask permission, because for some of them, they don't want that. They don't want to be involved in a Bible study. We try to have a spiritual conversation on each of our mentoring sessions. And then I try to connect with them during the week through text and just encourage them, let them know we're praying for them, thinking of them, if they have any questions, and trying to build that bridge so that they realize that, we're not just helping them through the birthing process, but we're interested in them as people.
Awesome. By the way, Carrie is online right now. She didn't put a comment, but she's loving listening to your to what you're saying here. So I just thought I'd let you know. So it's really great that you two, having formerly been in the Americas under your leadership, really loved your leadership when I started in 2015. So I'm thankful for you both. And as well as it's inspiring to see you get more involved in your community, especially with something as important as this pregnancy center, giving back to your church, which, I know from experience, obviously, that church partnerships are more than just about the donations they give, but it's about the support they give too. And I've been very blessed by that. And as I'm sure you have, seen that you're very involved in giving back to that church. So it's great to see how you two are just transitioning yourselves, leading by example. So if anyone has any questions for them, now is the time. We're about to wrap up. But if you have any questions or comments, now is the time to put in the chat.
Well, I would just add, as you were talking, one major part of ministry that we're also involved with that we didn't talk about is we have 10 grandkids, and they all live in our city. And so that's a part of what we do as well.
Yeah. And my 96-year-old mother who lives in the next little city over. So, we are very involved in her life as well.
So last Saturday, we did a escape room at our house for 3 8th grade graduates. Yeah. And
that was lots of fun.
It was fun. We put it together and figured out how to do it in a couple different rooms, and they enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's a thing out there. That's a very, very much a thing out there, is the escape rooms. It's at pretty much everywhere these days. But that's awesome. And it must be great to be home now, mostly to enjoy those grandkids and enjoy being home with your mom and having a community. One last question before we wrap up. How was your transition going from retirement to what can you share about that you can encourage missionaries out there who are in it for the long term?
You mean our transition from
before to now? I mean, you mentioned passing the baton, you mentioned having different transitions and everything else you mentioned in the beginning. So anything you'd like to share to encourage missionaries who are going through this transition, that you yourself have gone through this kind of transition, you know what you're talking about, what can you encourage them with?
I would say one of the things is we started talking about it a long time before, and not just say we'd like to retire, sometime, but really thinking through, okay, we're looking to retirement. What do we want to do? And that's kind of how we developed a lot of our ideas about the certain areas that we wanted to work in. And so we had some ideas, but I'd say one of the big things, we read a book, a really good book on the Uncommon Guide to Retirement. And one of his suggestions was to take a sabbatical. After you retire, don't jump into ministry. Take some time and be able to.
Because everybody wants a piece of you and has a million ideas for you.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, so we didn't jump into these things. We took some time off and we continued to get some rest and start to adapt to our life, our new home and that we were able to move into, and enjoy our family and rest
what
and
he wanted.
Yeah. And then just pray and think about, then after a few months, then we began to put into place the plans that we had for how we wanted to use our time.
I would say our life was a little bit different than the normal missionary, in the sense that because we were directors, we came back to the States often,
Right.
Twice a year. So it wasn't as big a shock as for someone who's lived all their life overseas and then they come home. But I would say that one of the key things for those who do live all their lives overseas is to become a learner again. You have to learn this culture and this language and how people function in this country, because it's not the same place you left 30, 40 years ago, even 20 years ago. And if you just try to jump in and do things the way you've done them overseas, it's probably not going to fly. But if you will sit back and just learn to appreciate this country and this culture again, and then figure out how you can plug in, that's probably that would be my piece of advice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Carrie says we love you, Thorps. So
Thank you,
you,
Carrie.
So if no one has any comments or questions, if you watch this later, feel free to put your questions or comments, and I'll make sure the Thorps get them by email. But both of you stay on after the broadcast. But thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us, Jim and Corinne.
Thank you.
Thank
It's good to share with you.